Before I got into documentary filmmaking full-time, I was a professional photojournalist. And if I'm being totally honest, I love the intimacy of shooting stills in a way that's pretty hard to replicate with all the gear and technical challenges that come from shooting video. But even though I love photography, and still do, I saw both the creative and financial opportunities in video that I wanted to explore, so I made the transition and I haven't looked back. But even though photography is still, in my opinion, some of the best possible training for filmmakers, the two things aren't quite the same. So in this video, I'm gonna get into 6 of the tips and tricks that help me wrap my head around the move from stills to motion a little easier. At the end, I'll go over the 2 camera accessories I'd add to your kit right away that most photographers don't usually own, and that took me years to figure out on my own. So hopefully it saves you some time. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Luke Forsyth, and on this channel, I teach the skills I've learned over 10 years working as a documentary filmmaker and photographer. If you're into that kind of thing, make sure to transition that subscribe button because I've got new videos like it coming out every week. Okay, so before I get right into these tips, I want to start with some words of encouragement. If you're a still shooter who wants to do more video work, but the whole thing feels overwhelming, don't worry about it. I was exactly the same for me when I started, and I made it work. If you've been taking photos for a while, you already have a massive advantage over other people starting from scratch, and you probably have way more skills than you think you do right now. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the photographers already have a handle on the hardest skills you need to be a good documentary filmmaker, and that learning all the technical stuff is actually the easy part. Photographers have a sense of framing and composition, they understand light, they know how a camera works and can set a good exposure, they understand the idea of visual storytelling, and most importantly, they know how to interact with people in front of their camera. Because at the end of the day, documentary filmmaking is really just about taking pictures of people you don't know to tell a story, and you can learn most of the technical stuff over time using YouTube and some practice. So don't stress, you've got this. And by remembering these simple tips next time you're shooting video, you'll be comfortable with it in no time. The first thing I'd say is that the biggest difference between photo and video is the idea of moments versus sequences. In photography, the aim is to tell the best story possible all within one frame. It's all about capturing the decisive moment when something amazing happens and then freezing that moment in time. Video, by comparison, tells stories through sequences of shots stitched together. It's a wide variety of shots from wides, mediums, and tights, and when I started shooting video, that was one of the hardest things to get the hang of. My tendency was always to find that one incredible frame and then hold it there for a long time, or maybe count to 10 seconds and then cut, then look for the next great frame. This makes things tough in the edit where what you really want are options to choose from. You want the wide shot of the whole room, and then the medium over the shoulder shot of the conversation and dialogue, and then maybe a tight on the character's fidgeting hands. You have to think about building out the whole mood of a scene through different shots, each of which tell us a little bit about what's happening, rather than looking for that one banger of a shot where the light is just perfect. Get those shots too, but make sure you're shooting for coverage and you'll be much happier in the edit. Quick tip here, when you're just learning, you might try not cutting between each shot and instead just sort of flow with the action. I shoot this way now, and for my photographer's brain, it helps me remember that I'm covering a dynamic moment rather than looking for frames. And sometimes the best stuff happens in those transitionary moments where you're going from someone's hands to their face or another moment of transition. And that's a good lead into the second tip I'd give you, which is to think about embracing movement rather than freezing it. Video is all about motion, obviously, but that might not make sense if you're used to stills. It's almost like there's an extra dimension or plane to be thinking about because the way the camera moves can also add a lot to your scene. A push-in might show that something important is happening, or a pull-out might be the end of a scene or talk about loneliness, and a rack focus can draw our attention between things. And even the way we pan and tilt and follow moving subjects all influence our story. Video cameras are totally free to move through the world in any direction, and the faster you can stop thinking of how to freeze the moment and move with it instead, the easier your transition will be. I'm gonna link to a video in the description from the guys over at Film Riot that goes into some of the most common camera moves and what they're used for, so check that out for more ideas on how to move the camera with intent. After movement, one of the concepts I found made a big difference in my video shooting was the role that detail shots play in telling a story. Since photography is usually more focused on decisive moments rather than sequences, a lot of the storytelling in stills is done in wide and medium shots because we learn so much from the environment around our subjects. There are exceptions obviously, like portraits and macro, but we're talking about making documentaries here, so I'm guessing that's probably not you. And so the third tip for today is details, details, details. Details and close-ups of the environment can be so useful in the edit. It can reveal a lot about a character in just a few seconds. I've used this example on the channel before, but when I was filming filming a doc in Mexico about a pair of female assassins, I noticed a Mother's Day card on the bookshelf in the room that said, "I love you, mama." This makes our characters so much more immediately full of depth and humanity, even if we don't agree with what they do, and it conveys all that in about 3 seconds. So when you're filming your first documentary, don't get so locked into your medium shot that you stop looking around the room. Keep your eyes out for details in the environment that speak to the larger story and get some cutaways of them. Whoever is doing the editing will love you for it. The fourth tip today is still the one I struggle with the most as a filmmaker. Coming from a photojournalism background and also mainly working as a cinematographer on big budget documentaries, most of my professional life has been about making images. But in documentary video, it's audio that's the real king of storytelling, and there's just no way around it. If you want to tell a story about people, getting good audio isn't optional, I'm sorry to say. Yes, it adds another layer of complexity to the whole process, but that's just the way it is, and we all have to accept it. Audio will form the narrative backbone of your story, and it will also cover all your cuts in post to keep the story flowing. So when you get ready to start working on your first doc, I'd highly suggest making sure you add a decent shotgun and some sort of wireless lavalier system to your list of essential gear. All the gimbals and drones and sweet prime lenses in the world won't help you without audio, so always make it a priority. The good news is that audio gear doesn't go out of date nearly as fast as camera gear does, so if you get some decent stuff, you'll be able to use it for a long time. I made a whole video about audio tools for small film crews, and I'll link to that in the description too. Alright, so now you're shooting in scenes and you've got good audio to keep the story rolling through the cuts, but now you need to figure out how to transition between each of these scenes in the edit. And for that, you need to be shooting like an editor, which means thinking about in and out points for every sequence. Again, photo is about freezing moments, and while good photo editors have a real sense of artistry when they choose which pictures to display next to each other, in video, you need to be moving between different environments much more fluidly. That means that as you're shooting, you should be constantly thinking about how you're gonna get yourself out of the scene you're working on and into the next one. That could be a wide shot of the outside of a building that the characters are in, or a slow pullback with a drone or on a gimbal, or maybe a moving character clears the frame so you have a natural cutting point. There are a lot of ways to do this, but remember that every scene in a movie or documentary has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Most beginners get so fixated on the middle part that they forget the other two, and so shooting with them in mind is going to pay huge dividends when you start to edit. The last tip for today is sort of a weird one, and I know I spent the whole intro to this video talking about how as photographers you already knew cameras, so you were way ahead and all of that, but I sort of lied.
You're a liar. You're a liar!
Because even though the principles of photography, which I mean the shutter, aperture, and ISO triangle, are the same between photo and video cameras, the truth is that you need to forget most of what you know when you shoot video. I don't want to get bogged down in technical details here, so I'm going to keep it simple. In general, you should set your shutter and ISO at the start of a shoot and then probably not change them again no matter what the light does. In photography, I would adjust these settings independently all the time for specific looks and purposes, but in video, it's really only the aperture that sees much use. Your shutter speed should stay fixed at double the frame rate you're shooting in, meaning that if you're shooting in 24 frames a second, you'd want to set your shutter speed to 1/48th or 1/50th of a second and leave it there. Going into detail about why this is would totally derail this video, so I'll just find a good explanation on YouTube somewhere and link to it in the description, but for now, let's just accept that this is true for most shooting situations. Next, most cameras have a native ISO. Unless you really need to, I generally wouldn't recommend changing it. While you can push the ISO pretty hard in stills and still get clean results, video files are much less flexible and tend to fall apart fast when pushed past what they were designed for. Of course, you can go a stop or two up, and it's not like it's gonna ruin your story, but video gets grainy and ugly very quickly when boosted, and I would suggest that if all possible, you figure out what the native ISO is and leave it there for best results. My Sony FX3 camera has a dual native ISO of 640 and 12,800, and in the last year of shooting it full time, I've never purposely shot on anything but those two numbers. When I shoot stills, I change the ISO all the time, so it's actually pretty different in that sense. All this means that your main exposure tool is your aperture, but then how can you get those cinematic shallow depth of field images you always see in movies if you have to shoot at f11 to compensate for the sun? Well, the answer to that is a perfect segue into talking about some of the gear I'd suggest adding to your kit as soon as possible. The good news is that most stills cameras already have amazing video options these days, but how do we get around the fact that we have just too much light coming into our sensor at low f-stops? The answer is One of these, a variable ND filter. I know that filters are not exclusive to video, and lots of photographers use polarizers and ND, especially the landscape people. But in a doc video, a variable ND pretty much lives on my camera at all times, and in the case of my main professional camera, the Sony FX9, there's actually one built on top of the sensor internally in the camera. The variable ND basically just allows you to lower exposure without any noticeable effects or color tints to the picture. And because our shutter speed and ISO are pretty much locked, whenever we want to shoot at f2.8 in the middle of the day, we need something to help cut the light. Think of them like sunglasses for your camera, and they're really the only way you can have a shallow depth of field in bright conditions. The next thing I'd recommend is a major quality of life booster, and that is a top handle. There are a lot of options out there, but a top handle is great, both for making the camera more versatile in terms of shooting positions, but also because it can make your footage a lot more stable. Holding your camera like a stills camera can lead to all sorts of micro jitters and shaking that is usually way less noticeable if you're holding the camera by the top handle. I suggest taking a look at a company like Tilta or SmallRig for these, and I'll link to some of those in the description. The one I'm using is from Wooden Camera, and I absolutely love it. It's built like a tank, but it's also crazy expensive, and I'm guessing most people aren't going to want that. I'll link to it in the description too, but Tilta and SmallRig are usually much more affordable and most of the way there in terms of quality. Even with just these basic two things, a top handle and a variable ND filter, you're already going to make your stills camera so much more functional when it comes to shooting video. They'll open up a bunch of different shooting positions and help you nail your exposure while still keeping a cinematic depth of field, and luckily neither of these things are too expensive when compared with new lenses or bodies. And the sooner you accept how much more gear you're going to have to carry around now that you've chosen to get into video, the better. So kiss your mobility, your lower back, and your carry-on luggage only days goodbye. You're a filmmaker now. That's it. 6 tips I wish I knew when I was just making the jump from photo to video, and some of the tools that will help make it a bit easier. Even though shooting stills is one of my favorite things in the world, even now, making the switch from photo to video was one of the best professional moves I ever made. If you're willing to go through the learning process and stick with it, it's going to open up a whole new world of creative possibilities and job opportunities, so stick with it. Hope you found that one helpful, and if you did, think about liking the video or subscribing to the channel for more like it every week. It really does help me. Or maybe think about checking out this other video I made about 6 pieces of affordable gear that are super useful for documentary filmmakers. See ya.